I wanted to say a word here too about different kinds or expressions of anger that people manifest in their own lives because everybody is familiar with the kind of anger that gets expressed when someone is like a rageaholic and they just become very demonstrably angry in such a way that it can be really frightening and can be really dangerous because when anger gets out of hand, of course, it can result in physical violence as well. So there are people who struggle that way who tend to have very um, angry outbursts. And a lot of times those are the kind of people that you find yourself walking on eggshells around because you don't want to trigger them to have that kind of an outburst. The ironic thing is that oftentimes you find that when you're around a person like that, what triggers them is unpredictable. You just you can think things are going well, and suddenly they're upset about something, and it deteriorates into an outburst of rage about something or other, which totally takes you by surprise. So that can be a very big difficulty. It's when you have a parent who has that kind of a difficulty, it's very, very wounding to the child on many different levels. So if you have that struggle, that's something you need to really examine and address in yourself, not just for your own sake, but for the sake of the people that you have you're in relationship with. There are also people though who don't overtly manifest their anger, express their anger, but they're more passive aggressive about it, and uh, and yet it's still very much anger being expressed, being played out. A person may say, we have these, depending on sometimes the culture that you come from, we have a mix of cultures in our community, for instance, and a mix too of cultural traditions in the way some of these things are expressed when there's dissatisfaction or anger or something that people are upset about. One culture chooses oftentimes or is trained to express anger in a particular way, and that's even gender specific. The way men and women feel they're allowed to express difference in different cultures varies. It really does. So, in some of the cultures that we have in our community, their manner of expressing anger is to become silent. So you get the silent treatment, and they will say to you when you talk to them about that, they will say to you, "Well, I'm actually being kind because I don't want to say anything that might hurt you or that I might regret." But oftentimes there's much more to it than that because in a very real sense, when you give somebody the silent treatment, you're basically saying you're disregarding them, and you're basically saying, "I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to even acknowledge that you're a person with whom I should be having a conversation about this. I'm just not going to do it." Now, it's true that sometimes we need to step back and take some space in order to bring our emotions into order. But, usually I have found that when people practice the silent treatment, it's not over very quickly. Um, and then, you may come to a point too in this whole passive aggressive area, may come to a point too where, this person is able to talk about it and there's able to be some kind of verbal reconciliation or forgiveness, and yet they still can't help themselves. They still um, behave in a sort of a passive aggressive way that's going to make you pay for whatever it is they think you did to them. And that, of course, is it's very difficult because then that person is operating out of they're holding on to resentment, or they're holding on to bitterness, or they're holding on to unforgiveness, and it isn't as though the thing never happened, which is what you hope for when you have um, an encounter of reconciliation and forgiveness. You hope that, okay, all right, now let's start again, begin again. But a lot of times you find that when people are passive aggressive, they can't do that, and they struggle to let go of the original hurt or the original offense. And that kind of a reality too with anger. This is the connection. Anger is very rooted to pride. We um, as I said before, we oftentimes make ourselves sort of as the center of the universe, and in our own way, we're caught into ourselves, and so um, we become indignant because we were treated in a particular way, and because of that, we find it very difficult to then turn around and forgive someone and let go of it. And but that's that's a manifestation of pride. And if you have that kind of a struggle in yourself, then you really have to work um, to ask the Lord to free you from that, and to humble you in the sense that you see things as they really are. You see the other as they really are, and you see yourself as you really are. This comes down to the fact that Jesus is. I'm telling you, you can't even grow angry with your brother, because it comes down to the fact that if we grow angry with our brother or sister, if we withhold forgiveness from our brother and sister, then that's how God's going to treat us. And I for one don't want that. But because anger is such a deep thing in us, it's something I believe it comes to us. The tendency toward it is in us from original sin. We contracted with the fall. We contracted something of the contagion of the evil one, who is full of a rage against God. And because of the way we sinned, we contracted some of that within us. So there's always this sort of a disordered tendency in us when it comes to anger. And because anger is so powerful and so easily triggered, we have to be very, very careful with it. Anger, yes, can move us to do uh, right things and good things and things that really need to be addressed in terms of justice, but it just as easily or even more easily can move us to things that are very destructive and don't do any good for anybody at all. So, whether you're one of those who becomes angry at the drop of a hat and very readily and easily so, or whether you're another type of person who actually is probably slower to anger, but then is more passive aggressive about it once you kind of realize, oh, I think I've been insulted. Um, no matter what kind of a person you are, anger is something we all have to deal with in our lives. And anger is there for a lot of different reasons, because of original sin and because of things that have happened to us. And so this week is a real opportunity to take care of ourselves, really, in relationship to the Lord in this whole area, to ask Him to show us, where anger has really infiltrated into our lives, and what we can do to address it, to bring ourselves more into conformity with Christ. That's who we're looking to as our measure. We want to become like Christ in all things. And Jesus, as we said, was all loving and all forgiving. Yes, He did have moments of anger which were justifiable anger, but even in His anger, He willed the good for, like, say, for instance, the Pharisees. He was willing the good for them, and speaking always with the idea that His words could reorient them to the true path to salvation. Okay, so His anger in that sense was, yes, justified, but also productive, or meant to be productive, of calling them back. Um, so that's what we want to ask the Lord for. We want to ask the Lord for these graces during this time as we deal with anger. And if any of you have any questions and you'd like to post them, you could do that. And perhaps Sister I could take some time to answer them too and post them in response. That would be a way to work with this as well, since we can't meet in person. So at any rate, please be assured that we're continuing to pray for you, and God bless you all. We will see you when we see you.